I've been meaning to make a video like this for a while now. Why, you might ask? Well, if you watch some of my older lens review videos, I've actually changed my opinion a lot when it comes to the Sigma lenses and LUMIX lenses and the LUMIX S PRO lenses. And so in this video, my goal is not to only tell you what my favorite lenses are for L-mount, but also the why behind why they are my favorite lenses. And so in the end, hopefully you come away learning something new. And I'm also gonna talk about one lens that's not directly L-mount related, but why it's kind of my favorite fun lens. If you don't know me, my name's Dustin, your video tour guide, and remember to keep your arms and legs inside your chairs at all times. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Now, I normally script my videos, but sometimes it's fun to just go rogue from the script and just kind of talk about stuff. So what I've done is I've put these lenses kind of in order of like least favorite of my favorites to most favorite of my favorites. Yeah, we're going with it. Hopefully this can give you some insight though, and we're gonna start off strong with a wider focal length. It's the 18mm S lens. Now this was one of the first lenses that I kind of used quite a bit on LUMIX that was a LUMIX lens. Originally, when I had bought my S1H back in the day, the reason why I didn't buy LUMIX lenses is because they were so expensive. There wasn't many options, which I'll get into in a minute. I had a 24-70 Sigma lens, f2.8, the Mark I version, obviously, a 14-24 Sigma, the f2.8, a 35mm 1.4 prime, and a 50mm, I think 1.8 or 1.4 prime, or maybe they were 1.8 primes. I can't remember. They were all Sigma lenses though, because well, at the time I just had less of a budget. But this 18mm, I actually did buy myself, but the time that I used it the most was when I was in Japan for the S5 II launch. It was kind of just the go-to vloggy lens that I used, and man, I don't know what it is about the clarity and the sharpness, the focus roll-off, the bokeh, everything about this 18mm I just love. There's something just kind of special looking about it. I remember when I had gotten home from Japan and I was editing the footage and I saw the footage of me in the airport with this lens, I was like, whoa, it just looks so like silky smooth. I don't know how to describe it. And to be fair, most of the S little prime lenses are this way as well. I just tend to use this one the most. I'll give an honorable mention to the 24mm. I use that one a lot as well. But the 35, 50mm, and the 85mm, I don't really use that often. And there's not really many cons I can say about these little prime lenses. I guess the only con you can say is that they're primes, so they're kind of not really versatile in a lot of different environments, which I'll get to kind of my main vloggy lens and why I choose that lens that gives me a bit more variation when I don't have the option of like changing between lenses, if that makes sense. And so speaking of like these S prime lenses, let me just get into the next one already. My next favorite one is the 100mm macro. Now this guy I use a lot, and probably the biggest reason is because there is not really any autofocus macro lenses that I know of. I know that there's the Sigma version, but I just love how tiny this is compared to the Sigma version. It's almost a lens that I always put in my bag now, especially when I'm doing like product shots and everything, and it looks really good. You know, all the little mini prime S lenses look amazing, but I just love how the form factor of this macro lens, and you can use it as a portrait lens as well. I just remembered one of the downsides to these other S lenses is they don't have an amazing minimum focus distance. I think the 18mm is actually pretty good, but the other ones, like the maybe the 24 or 35, I can't remember the exact numbers, but yeah, I really like this 100mm macro because it does give you a 1-to-1 ratio as far as macro goes. There are times when I am using this lens though to be aware of, where it'll be macro, but I can't get the lens to focus like so close. It takes a few times, or I gotta like click the screen, or I gotta change it to manual and just be like, this is where I want you to focus. So little annoyance there, but it's not really that big of a deal. And maybe it's something I'm doing wrong on my end, but love this lens. If you need a macro lens for Lumix or L mount, you cannot go wrong with this one. Just love how small, compact of a macro lens. Anyways, moving on to the next lens, which is quite a surprise for me because I used to be kind of against variable f-stop lenses. And so Lumix released this 28-200, and it does have optical image stabilization. And I was kind of not really too open to it because of the variable f-stop. I kind of got in my brain that variable f-stop is like, I don't know, just inconvenient to work with. And it's because other variable f-stop lenses that I had used in the past, the aperture like curve from when it goes to the most open, when you zoom, to the most closed, it would happen very quickly. So at like 28 millimeters, it would be at like an f4. This is an f4 to an f7.1. And then when I would get to like 70 millimeters, it would already be all the way up to 7.1. This one, however, at 28 millimeters, you get f4, and then it does not change. It basically transitions all the way up to 7.1 at 200 millimeters. And so the transition as you're zooming, you hardly notice it. And so that was one reason why I started to be more open to it. And I mean, 28-200 is such a long range to cover as well. This lens was basically glued to my camera while I was in Japan for the Japan Lumix Summit. It was basically glued to the S9. And if you want to see a video where I pretty much exclusively use this lens, not entirely, but most of those shots in that video were all with this lens. But another cool thing about it is at 28 millimeters, it's a half macro lens. And so it's really versatile that way too. I love lenses that have a really close minimum focus distance because I hate having to like, I'm getting closer, ooh, the shot's really starting to get good, but then that's the max focus distance. That's another reason why I like it. But also it can go up to an f45, and it has this thing called like super resolution. Essentially, it's just really sharp. As you can tell, the more and more I talk about this lens, the more you can kind of see how versatile it is. And yes, it does telescope, but look how tiny this thing is. Like, it's almost the same size as this 18 millimeter. It's just slightly bigger, slightly longer, I guess. And yeah, it telescopes, but that just covers so much range in such a small package. Like if you were to go with the 70-200, I have the f4 version. Look at that size difference. And this one covers more range, and it's still smaller when it's telescoped out all the way. And I get it. This is an S Pro lens. This is just an S lens. But I don't know. Like, I have a hard time recommending the 70-200 unless that's just something you really like. I am kind of biased. I don't really ever use this lens. I've used it a couple times, but I'm a little biased towards 70-200s because even on my Sony when I bought it, I never really used it. But back then, there wasn't many options when it came to like further, you know, those longer focal ranges. 70-200 was just like a necessity, right? Oh, and I forgot to mention all three of these lenses. So I originally bought this lens, but Lumix gave it to me when I was at the Japan event, and I was still within the return window. So I ended up returning it because I was like, well, why have two of them? And then this lens Lumix has sent me, and same with this lens, right? But don't worry, the rest of the lenses, all of them I've purchased. And I would have, you know, this one I may not have actually purchased myself if Lumix hadn't sent to me. I gotta be totally honest, but I'm really glad they did because I don't know. I don't know if I ever would have been open to them if I wouldn't have just tried it. It's a good reason why I have to say you should rent a lens before you buy it. Even if you're not totally open to it, like you like the focal range, you should just rent it and try it. Because yeah, I don't know if I ever would have purchased this lens because of the variable f-stop. But now that I've used it, I would 100% purchase this lens, and that's why it's in the list of favorite lenses. But don't worry, these next lenses I've all purchased myself. So there's no biases here. Before I get into these lenses though, I just gotta thank the sponsor of this video. Myself. I've actually always wanted to say that. If you haven't heard though, I launched an online course about how to use your LUMIX camera. There's already almost 100 students. So if you're one of them, thank you. And I am so excited to keep growing this platform. The one-time payment doesn't only grant you access to what's already there, which is mostly teaching you about the video settings, but it's also going to grant you access to the photography settings. I'm hoping to launch that very soon. And there's a whole bunch of other videos I have planned for the course, and it's one of the best ways that you can support me. So if you want to learn more information on the course, I'll have a link in the description to the website, or you can just go to course.learnlumix.com. I kind of mentioned my favorite vloggy lens, and it is the Sigma 16-28. The reason why I like this lens, I actually purchased the LUMIX 16-35 f4, and I get that's an S Pro lens, but I don't know, it just didn't really have that same S Pro magic, which I'll get to in a minute. I thought it would really kind of blow me away, but it didn't blow me away like a lot of the other lenses did. And I really love the form factor on this one, and that it's, you know, an internal zoom. And so anytime I just feel like I need a little bit more versatility when it comes to my vloggy stuff, I don't really use this very often for other things. Same with the 18mm, it's mostly just for like YouTube content. But I think it's a great lens. It has a great look to it. If you want to see a video that was almost entirely shot on this lens, I'll link it, or you'll see a card in one of the corners or something like that. But yeah, just great lens, great size, great look, sharp, clean, you know, kind of the common things you can come to find with any Sigma lens, really. Last little con that I will say, and maybe it's just because I'm so used to using a 16-35, at 28mm, like I sometimes miss having that little extra reach at 35mm. I think it's just because I prefer the look of 35 as opposed to 28, at least on this particular lens. And so it feels like I'm not getting as much reach, and I'm just not used to it, but still a great lens overall. Now, if you want reach though, that's where this lens comes into play, which is the Samyang 35-150 f2-2.8. I was extremely excited when I heard that Samyang was joining the L-mount alliance, and then this was going to be their first lens. I actually have a full review on this lens, and I'll be putting up a bunch of footage that I've shot with the lens as well. But the big reason that I bought this lens is I just kind of wanted a lens that could do it all. It could be a lens that I could grab just one, no matter the size, and it would cover everything, and it would even cover low light situations as well. Because like I said, I have the 70-200, but I don't really use it. I would pick up this lens over that 70-200 any day. A little update though, in that review video, I was having like lens attachment issues. They have since fixed that, Samyang has. And if you look at some of the videos online, it looks like you have to buy the dock in order to update the firmware. That's not the case. Since Samyang is a part of the L-mount alliance, you can just connect this to your LUMIX camera. You can put the firmware on an SD card, insert it into your LUMIX, and then you can update the lens straight from the camera. You don't have to use the dock. So that's another reason why the L-mount alliance is awesome. There's really not any like bad things about this lens that I have to say. The only thing I can think of is just that it's big, it's heavy, and it does telescope quite a bit. I'm actually surprised there's no like lens support. Like I'm a little worried. So if I leave that on my camera for a long time, so I'm gonna start bending it. But anyways, if you want just like a one and done lens, I love this lens. There's also, I'll do an honorable mention. I haven't actually used it, but there is the Sigma 28-105 f2.8 that was released after this lens, and I think that's a good lens that if you're more into Sigma and you don't want to go with Samyang, that's probably a good option as well. Now we're going to talk about probably the most controversial favorite lens of mine now, which is going to be the LUMIX S Pro 24 to 70. Why is this controversial? Well, if you watch my old review video where I compare this to the 24 to 70 Sigma, I actually end up choosing the Sigma. And it's crazy because they released the Mark II version before I bought this lens. Even after seeing the Mark II version, I decided to still buy this. I think it's just because a lot more footage online started to become available of this lens. And even when I used it, I didn't really use it in a shoot. This is another reason why you should rent a lens and actually use it, not just like do tests on a YouTube video, because I did rent it and tested it in that comparison video. And I had actually bought the Sigma version. But there's really something special about the S Pro lenses that the S lenses just don't have. I don't know what you call it, but I think it's just like some kind of like, it has like a 3D pop effect. And I never really thought that was a thing, but I'm a true believer in it now. This S Pro lens, it has some just kind of like pop to it. And I don't really know how to explain it. Like the parts that are in focus just seem really sharp, whereas like the fall off or the focus transition seems just like to make it so whatever you're focused on just like pops off the screen. The video that I used this lens quite a bit was this video. I'll be putting footage up on screen. And that was where I really started to understand just how good looking this lens is. And I don't know if this is exactly true, but I looked into like what's so special about the S Pro lenses compared to the S lenses. And I think I figured it out. The reason why the S Pro lenses are so special is because Sigma, even Samyang, these lenses are more made for photography, which doesn't mean that you can't use them for video, but this lens, the S Pro lenses, are not only made to look good in photos, but also in video. I don't know if this is true. This is something that I just, after hours of searching, like what makes the S Pro lenses so special, this was the best answer I could find online, was that these lenses are meant for video and also photography. And I think that makes a lot of sense because LUMIX is best known for its video features. They are powerful photography cameras as well, which, you know, little plug again, sign up for my course so you can learn what those settings are. It's kind of like when you use a cine lens for video as opposed to one of these photography lenses, you kind of start to see that magic that comes from those lenses. And so that's why I decided to not stick with the Sigma 24 to 70. It's not a bad lens at all. There is major advantages when it comes to that lens. And maybe I'm just kind of cuckoo when I look at the image compared to the Sigma, right? Maybe I'm just like making stuff up. I don't know. There's just something special about it. It is quite big. It's pretty heavy, but man, does it look good. Which is going to bring me to this last lens, at least one that is L mount, which I don't even know if you guys know that I own it, but it's the S Pro 50mm 1.4. I kind of want to make a whole video just on this lens in particular because there's kind of a lot to talk about it. I'm probably just going to tell you what my thoughts and feelings are, like the general consensus on what I would say in that video. And the big thing I would say is that it's not worth it if you buy it brand new, but it's 100% worth it if you buy it used. Yeah, I bought this lens used because after I started using the 24 to 70 S Pro, I was like, well, now I gotta buy the 50mm 1.4. And I'd heard that it was pretty special. Like it has a look to it that is pretty wild, but I just could never justify the cost of it new because this is an expensive lens. I think it's like $2,000. I think it was like $2,200 when it first released. And I'm like, that's crazy. And for a 50mm prime, I don't really love the focal length 50mm as a prime. And it's just massive. Like it's pretty much like just as big as the 24 to 70. And it's a prime lens. After using this lens, man, it's just beautiful. For video, for photo, the bokeh is just creamy, so round and circular. Oh man, this lens, it makes me giddy, like thinking about this lens. I actually have used it in a video, and I took it with me to Japan and I used it on a number of different things. It just sucks because it doesn't give me a ton of flexibility. And probably the thing that makes me the most sad making this video is I'm like, there's not many S Pro lenses that are available to buy out there. Like you've got these two lenses, right? You've got the 16 to 35, which is an f4, which I don't love. Not that it looks bad, but I want it to be a 2.8 like this 24 to 70. And then you've got the 70 to 200 f4, which I have, and it looks good. I haven't used the 70 to 200 f2.8, but I'm sure it's similar to like this one as well. But I don't really use that focal range. I don't really use 70 to 200. And it's just like way bigger than this and inconvenient, right? But we really do need more S Pro lenses, in my opinion. And I get it. LUMIX is a kind of more new to the full frame mirrorless market. They're still kind of like getting their lens lineup up to par with some of the other brands. And they're probably focusing more on like the cheaper, more affordable line. So because, you know, they're going to sell more of these and they are going to sell more pro lenses because it's just a smaller market. It's more niche. I get it. But man, the day when they make another S Pro lens, you better believe I'm hitting that pre-order the minute that it becomes available, if LUMIX doesn't send it to me. So yeah, those are all the L mount lenses that I personally love and have grown to become my favorite. Like I'd be happy with just these lenses. I have a whole closet full of lenses right there, but these are probably the ones that I use the most. And then the last lens that's just a kind of a little for fun lens. This is not an L mount lens. It's an M mount lens, but it's this little Brightin Star 28mm f2.8. Yeah, this little tiny thing. It's actually smaller. It's really hard to get off the mount. There we go. This is the lens. Wait, let me take off the cap too. This is the lens. It's tiny. It's like smaller than the cap that goes on the back of a lens. Look at that. I think it's just crazy that this thing is an f2.8. It has some disadvantages, like it doesn't have a great minimum focus distance, but this is my go-to lens when I'm just like going to a family party or like going to the aquarium or going to the park and I want to get some family photos, you know, just doing like family stuff or vacations. This is my go-to lens. I can't get this mount off. There we go. Just because it's so small, compact, and just like fun. I know it's not great probably for video. It's manual focus. And I don't know how you get an ND on the front of that. You can maybe hold one in front, but it has like some really cool character to it, especially pair it with the S9, and it's just a blast. I would not get the LUMIX, is it the 28mm f8 manual focus lens? I personally would not buy that lens. I would buy this lens. It's a little bit more expensive than that one, and you got to buy an adapter. This is M mount, so you have to get an M to L mount adapter, but it's just so much fun, and I love it. So anyways, there you have it. My favorite lenses for L mount, and I'm going to be talking about a favorite lens for Micro Four Thirds as well later, and I'm filming on it right now. So expect that video soon. Now I will have affiliate links down in the description if you have any interest in picking up these lenses. And if you buy those, they help support the channel. So I appreciate it if you use those. Also, if you feel like that my LUMIX Pro course is not for you, I also have some freebies you can download, my Blockchalet and my Photo Styles cheat sheet. Or you could also pick up my pack of Vlog LUTs. There's 40 of them. The 2 packs are called Artful Expressions and Filmic Essence. And let me know what you think of my picks for L mount and if yours are similar or different. You can also just support me by hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified of future uploads. Till the next video though, happy filming.